Welcome back, and thank you for tuning into Cheating Tales Lab. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know, what part of the world are you watching from right now? Let us know in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Perfect Lies. Nathan Hayes gripped the worn leather briefcase, his knuckles white as he navigated through the bustling halls of Boston Public High. Students darted around him, their energy a stark contrast to the weight in his chest. At 38, he'd mastered the art of commanding respect without raising his voice, a skill that served him well both in the classroom and at the endless social functions his wife dragged him to. Mr. Hayes. A sophomore waved, nearly dropping her textbook. Will you tell us about the Boston Tea Party today? That's next week's lesson, Sarah, he replied, managing a genuine smile despite his exhaustion. The previous night's charity gala had run late, another of Victoria's networking events where he played the role of the supportive spouse. His classroom stood as a testament to his passion. Maps of colonial Boston adorned the walls, alongside preserved documents he'd acquired through years of careful collecting. A letter from John Adams to his wife Abigail, authenticated and framed, held pride of place above his desk. The irony wasn't lost on him that while he taught about revolutions and betrayals from centuries ago, his own life was built on foundations he'd never thought to question. The final bell rang, and Nathan settled behind his desk, watching as his students filed out. He pulled out a stack of essays on the American Revolution, red pen poised to grade, when his phone buzzed. Victoria's name flashed on the screen. Nathan, darling. Her voice carried that particular tone she reserved for demands disguised as requests. The Thompsons are hosting a dinner party tonight. Richard's showcasing his new development project. Nathan's jaw tightened at the mention of Richard Thompson. The man's presence at their social events had grown more frequent over the past year. I have papers to grade, Victoria. These connections matter, Nathan. Your father's name still carries weight in Boston society, even if the money doesn't. The subtle dig was classic Victoria, a reminder of the disparity in their financial situations. Fine, he agreed, knowing resistance would only lead to an argument he didn't have energy for. What time? 7 sharp. Wear the navy Armani I bought you. The old Brooks Brothers suits make you look like what you are. The line went dead before he could respond. Nathan stared at his phone, remembering their first meeting 8 years ago. He'd been giving a speech about preserving Boston's architectural heritage at the Historical Society's annual gala. Victoria had approached afterward, her interest seemingly genuine, her questions thoughtful. Now he wondered if she'd rehearsed them beforehand. The memory shifted to their wedding day. Eleanor Montgomery, his mother-in-law, had cornered him at the reception, champagne glass in hand. "You're not what I expected for Victoria," she'd said, her smile sharp as a razor. "But I suppose every family needs its intellectual." A knock at his classroom door interrupted his thoughts. Rebecca, his younger sister, stood in the doorway, her expression troubled. "Got a minute, big brother?" Rebecca Hayes had inherited their mother's direct nature along with her auburn hair. She worked as a corporate lawyer, her expertise in trust law making her particularly valuable to old Boston families trying to protect their legacies. "Always for you, Becca." Nathan cleared space on his desk, noting the thick folder under her arm. "What's wrong?" "It's about Victoria." Rebecca placed the folder between them. "She's been making inquiries about the family trust documents. Specifically, about Dad's estate." Nathan frowned. "She knows the house is protected by heritage laws. We can't sell or develop it." "That's just it." Rebecca leaned forward, lowering her voice despite the empty classroom. "She's been meeting with Heritage Board members, pushing for reclassification of certain historical properties. And Nathan, she's not doing it alone." "What do you mean?" "Richard Thompson's firm is involved. They've successfully had 3 historical properties reclassified in the past year. All of them were demolished within months." Nathan's hand curled into a fist under the desk. "You're implying my wife is trying to get her hands on our family home?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm showing you evidence." Rebecca opened the folder, spreading out documents. "These are meeting minutes, property applications, private emails." "How did you get these?" "I have my sources." Rebecca met his gaze steadily. "Nathan, there's more." Victoria's bien. The click of heels on tile silenced her. Victoria stood in the doorway, elegant in a tailored Chanel suit, her blonde hair perfectly styled. Rebecca, what a surprise. Discussing more conspiracy theories about me? Just catching up with my brother, Victoria. Rebecca gathered her documents smoothly. I'll see you tonight at the Thompsons? Oh, didn't Nathan tell you? It's an intimate gathering. Couples only. Victoria's smile didn't waver as Rebecca retreated, but her eyes followed her sister-in-law until she disappeared down the hall. You didn't mention it was couples only, Nathan said. Didn't I? Must have slipped my mind. Victoria perched on the edge of his desk, her perfume overwhelming in the small space. Your sister needs to be careful. All these investigations into my business dealings. People might think she's becoming obsessed. She's protecting our family's interests. And what exactly do you think needs protecting? Victoria's voice hardened slightly. I've only ever worked to elevate the Hayes name, to make it mean something again beyond dusty museums and academic lectures. Nathan stood, gathering his papers. The Hayes name meant something long before you took it, Victoria. My father. Your father is dying in that mausoleum he calls a home, clinging to portraits of dead ancestors while the world moves on. Victoria's words cut like ice. I'm trying to build a legacy that actually matters in today's Boston. As they drove home separately, Victoria in her Mercedes, Nathan in his Honda, he couldn't shake Rebecca's warnings. The folder she tried to show him nagged at his thoughts. His wife's dismissal of his family's heritage struck deeper than usual. At home, Nathan retreated to his study while Victoria prepared for the dinner party. The room was his sanctuary, filled with books and historical documents he'd collected over years of teaching. He sat at his desk, attempting to focus on grading papers, but Victoria's voice drifted through the heating vent, unusually animated. Mother, you don't understand. Everything's proceeding exactly as planned. Nathan froze, pen hovering over an essay about the American Revolution. Why keep up this charade? Eleanor's voice crackled through the phone. That pathetic excuse for a husband? He's living off your success while those 3 beautiful children, all from your tall ex-boyfriend. You've been sleeping with Richard since your wedding night. Victoria's laugh, cold and clear, shattered the last remnants of Nathan's world. Mom, his family's dying heritage makes me untouchable in society. Once his sick father dies, the $1 million estate is mine. The red pen snapped in Nathan's grip, ink staining his fingers like blood. 8 years of marriage. 3 children he believed were his own. Moment, memory, tainted by lies. In that moment, Nathan Hayes, the mild-mannered history teacher, the patient husband, the devoted father, felt something fundamental shift within him. The ruthlessness that had helped his ancestors build Boston, the steel spine that had kept the Hayes name relevant for generations, awakened in his blood. Victoria's laugh echoed again through the vent, but Nathan no longer heard it. He was already planning, his mind racing through options with cold precision. She thought she'd married a pushover, a convenient stepping stone to social status. She was about to learn that the Hayes family hadn't survived centuries in Boston society by being weak. Opening his laptop, Nathan began his research. Not into historical events this time, but into his wife's business dealings, her connections, her weaknesses. If Victoria wanted to play with heritage and legacy, he would teach her a lesson about the true meaning of both. The dinner party at the Thompsons could wait. Nathan Hayes had more important matters to attend to, like dismantling the elaborate lie his marriage had become, piece by carefully documented piece. Chapter 2. The Unraveling. The revelation about his children struck Nathan with physical force, but he remained seated, his training as a historian taking over. Historians dealt in facts, in documentation, in verifiable truth. Right now, he needed all 3. His mind raced through memories, cataloging details he dismissed over the years. Emma's height, so much taller than both Hayes and Montgomery family members. James's natural athletic ability, mirroring Richard Thompson's famous college basketball career. Sophie's blonde hair, several shades lighter than Victoria's carefully maintained color. Nathan pulled open his desk drawer, removing a manila envelope he'd kept sealed for months. Inside lay the results of a DNA test he'd conducted during what Victoria believed was a routine medical checkup. He'd ordered it after noticing discrepancies in the children's medical histories, a nagging doubt he'd forced himself to ignore. The paper trembled slightly in his hands as he read the conclusion again. The alleged father cannot be the biological father of the tested children. This is established with 99.99% certainty. Dad. Emma's voice at his study door made him jump. At 13, she was already showing signs of the beauty that had made Richard Thompson a campus legend. Are you coming to dinner? Nathan looked at his daughter. No, not his daughter, and felt his chest constrict. Just finishing up some work, Em. You look nice. Mom picked the dress. Emma tugged at the expensive fabric. She says the Thompsons are important people. More important than you know, Nathan muttered, then forced a smile. Tell your mother I'll be ready in 20 minutes. Once Emma left, Nathan accessed his computer, pulling up files he'd started collecting after Rebecca's warnings. His browser history revealed months of research into Victoria's real estate dealings, her connections to Richard Thompson's firm, and most importantly, her manipulation of heritage property laws. A new email from Rebecca popped up. Found something. Need to meet. Not at the dinner. Nathan's reply was brief. Tomorrow. The vault. The Hayes family vault, hidden beneath their ancestral home, held more than just documents. It contained the key to their entire legacy, deeds, artifacts, and most importantly, evidence of Victoria's fraudulent use of the Hayes name in her business dealings. Standing, Nathan moved to his closet, pulling out the Armani suit Victoria had chosen. As he dressed, he could hear Victoria's voice drifting up from downstairs, talking to the children about proper behavior at the Thompsons. James, remember to compliment Mr. Thompson on his new development project, Victoria instructed. Sophie, darling, stay close to Mrs. Thompson. She adores you. Do I have to go? James's voice carried a whine. Dad said I could work on my history project tonight. Your father. Victoria paused, and Nathan could picture her perfect smile. Your father doesn't always understand what's best for this family. Nathan's hands stilled on his tie. The casual dismissal, so familiar now, carried new weight. How many times had she undermined him to the children? How many moments had she stolen, replacing his influence with Richard's? The drive to the Thompsons' estate was silent, broken only by the children's whispered conversations in the back seat. Victoria sat beside him in the Mercedes, tapping away at her phone, occasionally smirking at messages Nathan now knew must be from Richard. The Thompson mansion loomed ahead, a modern monstrosity built with profits from demolished historical properties. Richard greeted them at the door, his 6'4" frame filling the entrance. Hayes. Richard's handshake was too firm, too lingering. Victoria tells me you've been busy with some historical preservation project? Always. Nathan met Richard's gaze steadily. Someone has to protect Boston's heritage from developers who'd tear it all down for profit. Richard's smile faltered slightly. Progress requires sacrifice, Nathan. You can't live in the past forever. No, Nathan agreed, watching as Victoria brushed past them both, her hand grazing Richard's arm. But you can certainly learn from it. The dinner party was an exercise in restraint. Nathan watched as Richard dominated the conversation, boasting about his latest acquisitions. Victoria hung on every word, playing the perfect business partner, while Eleanor Montgomery made thinly veiled comments about successful men who understood the modern world. Nathan, Richard called from the head of the table, Victoria mentions your father's health is declining. Have you considered the future of the Hayes estate? Nathan took a slow sip of wine, noting how Victoria tensed slightly. The Hayes estate will remain exactly what it's always been, a testament to Boston's educational heritage. Surely in this market, Richard began, but Nathan cut him off. Some things aren't for sale, Richard. Legacy, integrity, truth. These matter more than market value. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Victoria laughed nervously, touching Richard's arm. Nathan's just passionate about history. You know how academics can be. Later that night, after putting the children to bed, Nathan retreated to his study instead of joining Victoria in their bedroom. He opened his laptop, accessing secure servers Rebecca had helped him set up. A message from Marcus Rivera. their family's groundskeeper, awaited him. Sir, photographed Mrs. Hayes entering the property at 2 a.m. last Tuesday. Mr. Thompson's car parked at the gate. All documented as requested. Nathan downloaded the photos, adding them to his growing file. 8 years of marriage, 3 children, countless lies. All documented now, all feeding his determination for justice. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Coming to bed? Working late, he replied, already pulling up property records and heritage classifications. Victoria's response came quickly. Don't work too hard, darling. Some things are more important than old buildings. Nathan's laugh held no humor as he typed. Yes, they are. Turning back to his computer, Nathan began composing emails to key members of Boston's Historical Society Board. Victoria thought she was dealing with a passive academic, too wrapped up in the past to see the present. She would learn that studying history taught more than just dates and facts. It taught strategy, patience, and most importantly, how empires fell. The children's photos smiled at him from his desk, Emma's recent school picture, James's baseball team photo, Sophie's dance recital snapshot. His heart ached, but his resolve strengthened. They might not be his biologically, but he'd raised them, loved them, shaped their minds and hearts. Victoria's betrayal wouldn't change that. It would only ensure she paid the full price for her deception. Opening a new document, Nathan began detailing everything he knew about Victoria's business dealings, Richard's development plans, and Eleanor Montgomery's social connections. By the time Victoria's empire crumbled, she would understand exactly who she had underestimated. The old Hayes family motto, carved into the vault's door, came to mind, Veritas Vincit, truth conquers. Nathan allowed himself a grim smile. Victoria was about to learn just how conquering truth could be. Chapter 3. The Silent Departure. Nathan's call to William Hayes lasted exactly 3 minutes and 27 seconds. In that brief span, father and son spoke more truth than they had in years. The vault, William whispered, his voice weak but urgent. Get everything before she does. I know about Victoria, Dad. About Richard Thompson, the children. Nathan's voice caught. Son. William's tone carried generations of Hayes' strength. Our name survived the Revolution, the Depression, 2 world wars. It will survive this. The combination. Is Mother's birthday backwards? Nathan finished. I remember. Everything you need is there. Marcus knows. The line went quiet for a moment. You're my son, Nathan. Biology be damned with those kids. Show them what that means. Nathan ended the call, already moving. The night stretched ahead, full of purpose. His laptop contained everything he discovered about Victoria's schemes, her fraudulent use of the Hayes name, her secret meetings with Heritage Board members, her carefully orchestrated manipulation of his family's legacy. The drive to the Hayes estate took 20 minutes. Marcus Rivera, their groundskeeper of 30 years, waited at the service entrance. Mrs. Hayes called earlier, Marcus reported, his weathered face grim. Asked about access to the basement storage. Said she needed to document some family artifacts. When? Tomorrow morning. She's bringing Mr. Thompson's heritage assessment team. Marcus handed over a thick envelope. These are copies of everything I've documented over the past year. Times, dates, photographs. Mr. Thompson's car, late-night meetings, everything. Nathan gripped the older man's shoulder. Thank you, Marcus. My father. Sleeping now. The nurse says he's comfortable. Marcus produced a ring of keys. I've kept the vault entrance clear. Mrs. Montgomery Hayes never found the secondary access through the wine cellar. The Hayes family vault occupied a section of the basement that predated the American Revolution. Nathan descended the narrow stairs, Marcus's flashlight beam illuminating decades of family history. The main vault door, steel reinforced and modernized in the 1950s, bore the family motto in raised letters. Veritas Vincit, Nathan murmured, spinning the combination dial. 3 clicks later, the door swung open. Inside, history lived in careful organization. Shelves lined with leather-bound documents occupied one wall. Glass cases protected artifacts, a sword from the Revolutionary War, silver from the colonial era, journals dating back to Boston's founding. But Nathan moved past these to the modern filing cabinets at the back. Third drawer. Marcus directed. Everything about Mrs. Hayes's business dealings. Board meetings, property assessments, her attempts to access family documents. The surveillance photos are in the red folder. Nathan worked, transferring essential documents to his briefcase. Property deeds showing the Hayes family's historical holdings. Trust documents proving Victoria's lack of legal claim. Most damning, evidence of her fraudulent use of the Hayes name to secure development contracts. A leather journal caught his attention, his mother's diary, documenting the family's social connections dating back decades. Inside, a note fell out in his father's shaky handwriting. Nathan, the truth always surfaces. Act accordingly. Dad. Mr. Hayes. Marcus's voice carried urgency. Headlights on the main drive. Nathan closed his briefcase. Victoria? No. Mr. Thompson's car. He's been meeting her here lately, usually after midnight. Perfect. Nathan pulled out his phone, opening the camera. Time to document one last betrayal. They waited in darkness as footsteps echoed above. Victoria's laugh drifted down, followed by Richard's deeper voice. Through the wine cellar's ventilation shaft, their conversation carried clearly. Once the heritage assessment goes through tomorrow, Richard was saying, we can start the redevelopment process. Nathan won't be able to stop it. He won't even try, Victoria replied. He's too buried in his books to notice what's happening around him. Just like his father, living in the past while the present slips away. And the children? They barely know him. Emma already asks why she can't spend more time with you. It's natural, isn't it? A girl wanting to know her real father. Nathan's grip on his phone tightened, but he kept recording. Each word, each laugh, fed the cold fury building in his chest. When the voices faded, moving upstairs, he turned to Marcus. You'll testify to everything you've seen? The Hayes family gave my father work when no one else would. Gave me a home, an education for my children. Marcus's expression hardened. I'll tell every truth I know. Back home, Victoria slept soundly, unaware of her husband's nocturnal activities. Nathan entered his study for the last time, placing a single envelope on his desk. Inside, DNA test results proving his medical condition, documentation of Victoria's fraud, and a short note. Truth conquers all. He packed efficiently, clothes, personal documents, his most valuable historical texts. In the children's rooms, he paused. Emma sprawled across her bed, homework scattered around her. James clutched a baseball Nathan had helped him practice with. Sophie's room overflowed with books they'd read together. Nathan placed 3 sealed letters in his briefcase, each addressed to a child, to be delivered when the time was right. They might not share his blood, but he'd made sure their futures would be secured through education trusts beyond Victoria's reach. His Honda Civic started quietly in the garage. Behind him, the house where he'd lived a lie for 8 years disappeared into darkness. But Nathan Hayes didn't look back. Ahead lay the task of dismantling Victoria's carefully constructed facade, piece by devastating piece. The Hayes family had helped build Boston through revolution, reconstruction, and renewal. Now one of their own would demonstrate just how thoroughly they could also tear down those who threatened their legacy. Truth conquers all, indeed. Chapter 4. Hidden Moves. The apartment in Cambridge bore little resemblance to Nathan's former life. A twin bed, a desk, and a collection of historical documents spread across the walls, maps of Boston's changing landscape over centuries, property records, and newspaper clippings detailing the city's architectural transformations. Each piece represented a thread in the web he was weaving around Victoria's empire. A knock at his door interrupted his research. Grace Sullivan stood in the hallway, laptop tucked under her arm. At 35, she carried herself with the alertness of someone used to looking over her shoulder. Your wife made the news again, Grace said, settling at his desk. She pulled up a video clip of Victoria standing outside their former home, perfectly composed in designer morning clothes. My husband's disappearance has devastated our family, Victoria's voice quavered expertly. With his father's illness weighing heavily on him, I fear Nathan may not have been in his right mind. If anyone has seen him, please. Nathan muted the video, his expression stone. She's playing her part well. Too well. Grace typed rapidly, multiple screens of code reflecting in her glasses. But she made mistakes. The police report she filed? Detective Michael Reeves is handling the case. He's been asking interesting questions about her real estate dealings. What kind of questions? The kind that suggest he's not buying her grieving wife act. Grace pulled up encrypted emails. He's been investigating irregularities in heritage property classifications. 3 historical buildings that mysteriously lost their protected status before being demolished by Thompson Development. Nathan leaned closer, studying the documents. Can you get me a meeting with him? Already arranged. Grace handed him a burner phone. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., at the Old North Church. Fitting location for a revolution, don't you think? The next morning, Nathan sat in one of Boston's oldest landmarks, surrounded by the weight of history. Detective Michael Reeves slid into the pew beside him, his weathered face betraying nothing. Mr. Hayes. Reeves kept his voice low. Interesting choice of meeting place. I teach my students that the American Revolution began with secret meetings in churches. Nathan turned to face him. Tell me, detective, what do you know about my wife's business practices? Officially, I'm investigating your disappearance. Mrs. Hayes is very concerned about your mental state. And unofficially, Reeves pulled out a small notebook. The timing of your disappearance coincides with several irregularities I've been tracking. Heritage properties losing protection just before Thompson Development acquires them. The Hayes name appearing on permit applications without proper authorization. Your wife's frequent meetings with Richard Thompson during hours that don't align with normal business operations. You've been thorough. I don't like being manipulated, Mr. Hayes. Your wife tried to steer my investigation toward your father's illness, suggesting you might have become unstable. But your school records show you teaching right up until your disappearance. Your students describe you as focused, engaging. Not exactly the profile of a man losing his grip. Nathan's mouth curved slightly. What do you need from me? Evidence. Hard proof of fraud. Something I can take to the DA that won't be dismissed as a domestic dispute. Check the Williams property on Beacon Hill. Victoria used the Hayes family name to push through rezoning applications. The signatures are forged. I can prove it. Reeves nodded slowly. That would be a start. But be careful, Mr. Hayes. Your wife isn't just playing the grieving spouse. She's been meeting with private investigators, and Richard Thompson's security team has been asking questions in Cambridge. Let them ask. Nathan's voice hardened. Victoria thinks she married a passive academic. Time she learned what the Hayes name really stands for. Back in his apartment, Nathan reviewed Grace's latest findings. Victoria's business emails revealed an aggressive push to acquire more historical properties. Richard's firm had already drawn up plans for luxury condominiums that would replace centuries of Boston history. They're moving faster than expected, Grace noted, highlighting key documents. Victoria's scheduled meetings with Heritage Board members next week. She's using your disappearance to gain sympathy, painting herself as a woman forced to take control of family business matters in crisis. She always did know how to play the victim. Nathan pulled up property records. What about the children? Grace's expression softened slightly. Emma's been asking questions at school. Her teachers report she's withdrawn, spending lunch periods researching family genetics. James got into a fight, defending you when another student repeated rumors about mental illness. Sophie. She paused. Sophie's been carrying your old history books to class. Nathan's hands stilled over the keyboard. The anger that had driven him since discovering Victoria's betrayal crystallized into something colder, more focused. His wife hadn't just betrayed him. She was systematically destroying everything the Hayes family had built, including the children's sense of security. Show me Victoria's next week's schedule, he commanded. It's time we moved this war from shadows into the light. Grace pulled up a detailed calendar. She has a presentation to the Heritage Board on Thursday. Richard will be there to support the development proposals. Perfect. Nathan opened his laptop, accessing files he'd retrieved from the Hayes vault. Let's give them a history lesson they won't forget. The next few days passed in careful preparation. Nathan coordinated with Detective Reeves, providing documentation of Victoria's fraudulent use of the Hayes name. Grace worked her technological magic, ensuring the evidence would be irrefutable. Victoria continued her public performance of concern, but Nathan noted the strain beginning to show. Her carefully crafted image developed cracks as Detective Reeves's questions became more pointed, more public. "She's getting nervous," Grace reported, monitoring Victoria's communications. "She's called Richard 3 times today, and there's been contact with high-priced lawyers specializing in fraud defense." Good. Nathan studied the map of Boston spread across his desk, historical properties marked in red. The more nervous she gets, the more mistakes she'll make. A new email alert popped up on Grace's screen. "Nathan, she's scheduled a press conference. She's going to announce plans to establish a mental health foundation in your name. She's using your disappearance to launch a publicity campaign." Nathan's laugh held no humor. She always did excel at turning tragedy into opportunity. He turned to the wall of documents, each piece representing a step in Victoria's downfall. Time to remind her why Boston's oldest families survived for centuries. We know how to fight dirty. Chapter 5. The Alliance. Amanda Thompson's penthouse overlooked Boston Harbor, the view paid for with her divorce settlement from Richard. She poured 2 glasses of wine, her manicured nails matching the expensive Cabernet. Richard always underestimated the women in his life, she mused, handing Nathan a glass. He thought money could buy silence. Victoria made the same mistake. "Tell me about their relationship," Nathan prompted, noting how Amanda's practiced socialite demeanor slipped when she mentioned her ex-husband. "It started at Harvard. Victoria was studying real estate development. Richard was the star athlete everyone wanted to marry. When he chose me instead." Amanda's laugh was sharp. "Well, Victoria never forgave either of us. She dated other men, built her career, but she always kept tabs on Richard. And now she thinks she's won. Richard's empire, your family's social standing. It's all part of her perfect revenge story." Amanda retrieved a USB drive from her desk. "But Richard has a habit of recording his business meetings. Insurance, he calls it. These are copies of conversations between him and Victoria going back 5 years. Pay attention to the Heritage Heights project. They discussed using the Hayes name to bypass preservation laws." Nathan pocketed the drive. "Why help me?" "Because Richard destroyed my family to be with Victoria. Because he uses our children as props when it suits his image, then sends them away to boarding school." Amanda's polished veneer cracked. "Because men like Richard and women like Victoria think they can take whatever they want without consequences." A knock interrupted them. George Thompson, Richard's father, entered the room. At 75, he carried the weight of his family's legacy in his bearing. "Nathan." George's handshake was firm. "I've been following Victoria's press appearances. Quite the performance. She learned from the best," Amanda noted dryly. "Your son's talent for public manipulation had to come from somewhere." George accepted the implied criticism with a nod. "I taught Richard everything about business, but somewhere he forgot the most important lesson. Legacy isn't just about money." When he began working with Victoria to destroy historical properties, he shook his head. "The Thompson name used to stand for something in Boston. It still can," Nathan said. "Help me stop them. I have records." George settled into an armchair. "Development plans they tried to hide from me, Heritage Board members they've bribed, properties they've targeted for destruction. I kept everything, hoping Richard would remember who he used to be." Amanda pulled up emails on her laptop. Victoria's scheduled a major presentation next week. Heritage Board, potential investors, press, all there to witness her grand vision for modernizing Boston's historical districts. "Using my family's name to destroy my family's legacy." Nathan's voice was cold. "What else?" "She's pushing to have your father declared mentally incompetent," George revealed. "Richard's lawyers are preparing documents claiming William Hayes is unfit to manage the estate. They want Victoria appointed as conservator." Nathan's grip tightened on his wine glass. "My father is dying of cancer. His mind is sharp as ever. They're counting on public sympathy," Amanda explained. "Poor Victoria, dealing with a mentally ill husband and an incapacitated father-in-law. The perfect narrative to justify taking control of the Hayes properties. She won't succeed." Nathan placed his untouched wine aside. William Hayes has already transferred everything to a trust. Victoria's name isn't on any of it. George leaned forward. You'll need more than legal documents. Richard has judges in his pocket, lawyers who specialize in breaking trusts. I don't plan to fight this in court. Nathan pulled out his phone, showing them Detective Reeves's latest message. The police are building a fraud case, but I need something more personal. Amanda's smile turned predatory. Like proof that Richard's been embezzling from his own company? Recordings of him admitting to bribing officials? Or perhaps evidence that he and Victoria have been systematically targeting historical properties owned by old Boston families? All of it. Nathan's expression matched hers. Victoria wanted to use my family's name? Let's show her exactly what that means. They worked late into the night, piecing together evidence. George provided internal Thompson development documents showing systematic fraud. Amanda contributed recordings and emails proving the affair had never ended, even during her marriage to Richard. Each piece added to the weight of evidence Detective Reeves was building. There's one more thing, George said as Nathan prepared to leave. Richard's been moving money offshore. Victoria's name is on the accounts. They're preparing for something big. The Hayes estate, Nathan realized. They're planning to move fast once they get control. Not just the estate. Amanda pulled up property records. They've been quietly buying land around historical sites all over Boston. Once they break the preservation laws using your family's influence, they'll destroy centuries of history for luxury condos. Nathan's voice was ice. Not going to happen. Back in his apartment, Grace was waiting with news. Victoria's been meeting with a PR firm. They're planning a major campaign, preserving Boston's future or some nonsense. She's positioning herself as a visionary, bridging old and new Boston. Nathan spread out the new evidence on his desk. She wants to play with heritage? Let's give her a history lesson. Get me everything you can on the Heritage Board members. Everyone has secrets they'd rather keep buried. Grace's fingers flew over her keyboard. Already on it. And Nathan? William's nurse called. Victoria tried to visit him today, bringing a team of doctors for a competency evaluation. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Nathan Hayes, the man who had taught generations of students about historical preservation, felt the weight of centuries of Boston history settling on his shoulders. Victoria thought she was fighting one man. She was about to learn she was fighting an entire legacy. Send everything to Reeves, he ordered. It's time Boston remembered why the old families ruled this city for centuries. We didn't survive by being nice. Chapter 6. The Children's Truth. The coffee shop across from Boston Public High School provided a perfect vantage point. Nathan sat in a corner booth, baseball cap pulled low, watching as Emma Hayes navigated the morning crowd. At 13, she moved with Victoria's confidence, but showed signs of uncertainty her mother would never display. Maria Ramirez, the children's former nanny, slid into the booth opposite him. Her dark eyes held a mixture of sympathy and determination. Emma asks about you, Maria said without preamble. She found the medical records in Victoria's office. She's smart, that one. Started researching genetic inheritance patterns. Nathan's hands tightened around his coffee cup. Victoria's response? Sent her to a therapist. Claimed you'd filled the children's heads with lies before you left. Maria's expression hardened. But Emma's not buying it. She remembers too much. The way Richard always showed up at her sports events, how Victoria pushed her to spend time with him. James, acting out, got suspended last week for fighting. Some kid repeated rumors about you having a mental breakdown. Maria pulled out her phone, showing Nathan photos. But look what he keeps in his backpack. The images show James's school materials, and among them, Nathan's old history books, the margins filled with notes they'd made together studying American Revolution battles. Sophie misses you most openly. Victoria's response was to hire a new nanny and enroll her in extra activities. That child spends more time with tutors and coaches than her mother. Maria reached into her bag, retrieving a worn notebook. I kept records. Times Victoria missed school events, dates Richard visited, conversations I overheard. I knew something wasn't right. Nathan took the notebook, noting Maria's meticulous documentation. Dates, times, locations, a detailed record of Victoria's neglect and Richard's inappropriate involvement in the children's lives. There's more, Maria continued. Victoria's been meeting with child psychologists, building a case that your disappearance traumatized the children. She's using their emotional struggles to support her story about your mental state. Using her own children as props, Nathan's voice was deadly quiet. Has Richard been visiting? Only when Victoria arranges it. But Emma started refusing to see him. Last time, she locked herself in her room with one of your old family photo albums. A new voice joined their conversation. Mr. Hayes? Nathan looked up to see Dr. Sarah Chun, Emma's school counselor, approaching their booth. She sat without waiting for an invitation. Emma's been asking questions in our sessions, Dr. Chun said. Specific questions about DNA testing, about legal definitions of parenthood. She's processing things in her own way. Victoria's response? Attempted to have me removed as Emma's counselor. When that failed, she tried to restrict what we could discuss. Dr. Chin's professional demeanor cracked slightly. I've documented everything. The attempts at manipulation, the way she's using the children's emotional responses to support her narrative about you. Nathan absorbed this information, his academic's mind cataloging each detail, while his heart ached for the children caught in Victoria's web. James's teacher reached out too, Maria added. Found him in the library researching the Hayes family history. He's trying to understand his place in it all. They're all trying to understand, Dr. Chin observed. But Victoria's so focused on her agenda, she's missing their genuine pain. She treats their questions as problems to be managed rather than feelings to be addressed. Nathan pulled out 3 envelopes from his briefcase. Can you make sure these reach them? When the time is right, Dr. Chan examined the sealed letters. You've established trust funds for them, educational trusts, Nathan corrected, protected from both Victoria and Richard. They may not be my biological children, but their futures will be secured. Blood isn't everything, Maria said softly. Those children know who really cared for them. They spent the next hour reviewing Maria's documentation, Dr. Chun adding her professional observations about the children's emotional states. Each piece added to Nathan's understanding of how deeply Victoria's manipulations had affected the children. Emma's science project next week, Dr. Chun mentioned. She's chosen to research genetic inheritance patterns. Victoria tried to get her to change topics, but Emma refused. Nathan's slight smile held no warmth. She has her mother's determination, but she's using it to find truth rather than hide it. As they prepared to leave, Maria touched Nathan's arm. Victoria's hired a new nanny. Young girl, seems overwhelmed. The children, they're not taking it well. Tell me. Nathan's voice was tight. Sophie cries at bedtime. Asks for the stories you used to read. James refuses to let the new nanny help with homework. Says only you understand how he thinks. Emma. Maria paused. Emma's become the protector. She sits with Sophie until she falls asleep, helps James with his assignments. She's trying to fill the gap you left. Victoria's response? Increase their therapy sessions. Keeps pushing them to spend time with Richard. Last weekend, she forced them to attend a Thompson family brunch. Emma came home and spent hours going through old Hayes family albums. Dr. Chan interjected. Emma's been researching inheritance law in the school library. She's asking sophisticated questions about legal rights, about the meaning of family. She's processing this in a remarkably mature way. Nathan absorbed this information, his resolve hardening. The educational trusts are ironclad. Victoria and Richard can't touch them. Each child will have their future secured, regardless of what happens. It's not just about money, Maria said softly. They need stability, truth. Victoria's version of events keeps shifting. One day she's telling them you're mentally ill. The next she's suggesting you abandon them for a new life. The inconsistencies. The children notice. They're Hayes, Nathan said simply. Truth matters to us. Back in his apartment, Nathan reviewed his notes from the meeting. Grace was already typing rapidly at her laptop, adding Maria's documentation to their growing evidence. Victoria's getting sloppy, Grace observed. She filed a motion to have herself appointed as the children's sole legal guardian, citing your abandonment. But she didn't consider that Emma's old enough to speak to a judge. If Emma reveals what she's discovered about Richard, Victoria won't let it get that far, Nathan cut in. She'll find a way to silence Emma, probably send her to boarding school, like Richard did with his other children. His phone buzzed, a message from Detective Reeves. William Hayes's doctor reported attempted interference with his medical care. V tried to have new physicians assigned. Documented everything. Nathan's expression turned granite hard. Victoria was attacking on all fronts. His father, the children, his reputation. She'd taken his family name, used his position in Boston society, and now thought she could erase him from his children's lives. Send everything to Robert, he instructed Grace, referring to his federal judge uncle. The trust documents, Maria's records, Dr. Chin's observations. It's time we showed Victoria what the Hayes family does to those who betray us. Grace nodded, her fingers flying over the keyboard. The Heritage Board meeting is in 3 days. Victoria's planning to use it to announce her new role as protector of the Hayes legacy. Perfect timing. Nathan turned to the wall of evidence they'd accumulated. Let her make her grand announcements. By the time we're done, the only thing she'll be protecting is herself. A final text from Maria lit up his phone. Sophie found your old copy of the Declaration of Independence. Keeps reading the part about unalienable rights. These are your children, Nathan. Not by blood, but by choice. Nathan Hayes looked at the message for a long moment. Victoria thought she won by taking his children, his name, his reputation. She was about to learn that some things couldn't be taken. They had to be earned. And the Hayes family legacy was earned through generations of standing firm against those who would destroy it. The war was moving from shadows into light. Victoria had played her games with heritage, with family, with truth itself. Now she would learn why Boston's oldest families had survived centuries of attempts to destroy them. The Hayes name wasn't just a key to social circles. It was a promise of retribution against those who betrayed its principles. The children would have their truth. The legacy would be preserved. And Victoria Montgomery Hayes would learn that some wars can't be won with money and manipulation. Some wars are won with the weight of history itself. Chapter 7. Calculated Strikes. The Heritage Board conference room buzzed with anticipation. Victoria Montgomery Hayes stood at the podium, resplendent in designer black, playing her role of grieving wife turned determined businesswoman to perfection. Boston's future demands vision, she declared to the assembled board members and press. We can't let outdated preservation laws stifle progress. The Hayes family has always understood the balance between heritage and development. In the back of the room, Jennifer Walsh, junior partner at Victoria's firm, clutched a manila envelope beneath her desk. 6 years of working under Victoria had taught her to mask her emotions, but today her hands trembled slightly. Her phone buzzed. A message from Nathan Hayes. Now? Jennifer stood, her voice cutting through Victoria's practice speech. I have documents proving systematic fraud in heritage property classifications. Victoria's perfect composure cracked for just a moment. Jennifer, this isn't the appropriate fora. I have copies of falsified applications, Jennifer continued, distributing papers to board members. Forged signatures using the Hayes name, bribes to officials, deliberate misclassification of protected properties. Richard Thompson rose from his seat in the front row. These accusations are baseless. Are they? Detective Michael Reeves stepped into the room, badge displayed. The police department has been investigating these allegations for months. Ms. Walsh has provided crucial evidence of criminal fraud. Cameras flashed as Victoria gripped the podium. This is a personal vendetta. My mentally unstable husband is perfectly sane. Robert Morrison's authoritative voice rang out as Nathan's federal judge uncle entered. And the Hayes Family Trust has filed a civil suit against both Victoria Montgomery Hayes and Thompson Development for fraudulent use of the family name. The conference room erupted in chaos. Reporters shouted questions as board members pored over Jennifer's documents. Through it all, Victoria maintained her pose, but her eyes darted between exits like a trapped animal. Mrs. Hayes, a reporter called out. How do you respond to allegations that you married Nathan Hayes specifically to access his family's influence in historical preservation circles? Before Victoria could respond, Eleanor Montgomery burst into the room. This is absurd. My daughter has worked tirelessly to modernize, to destroy, Nathan's voice cut through the chaos as he stepped into view. The room fell silent. To tear down centuries of history for profit. Victoria's mask slipped entirely. Nathan, how dare you? How dare I? Nathan's laugh held no warmth. You married me for my name, bore another man's children while gaslighting me about my medical condition, and planned to destroy my family's legacy. The question, Victoria, is how dare you? You abandoned your family, Victoria countered, playing to the cameras. Left 3 children, who aren't mine biologically, Nathan cut in. Though you knew that all along, didn't you? Just like you knew about the offshore accounts, the bribes, the fraudulent permits. Detective Reeves has quite a file on your activities. Richard Thompson moved to intercept Nathan, but Amanda appeared at his side. Sit down, Richard. Or shall we discuss the recordings I provided to your board of directors? George Thompson stepped forward next, facing his son. The Thompson Development Board meets this afternoon. Fraud allegations against the CEO should make for interesting discussion. Victoria's composure crumbled completely. This is a conspiracy. No, Jennifer Walsh interrupted, still distributing documents. This is evidence. Years of systematic fraud, all documented. Property classifications altered, heritage protections stripped, historical buildings demolished for profit. Robert Morrison addressed the Heritage Board directly. My firm has prepared a comprehensive report detailing violations of preservation laws. The Hayes Family Trust demands immediate cessation of all development projects using our name. Reporters scribbled frantically as Victoria's carefully constructed world imploded. Nathan watched from the back, his expression impassive as years of deception unraveled in minutes. The police have questions about certain financial transactions, Detective Reeves announced. Mrs. Hayes, Mr. Thompson, I'll need you both to come with me. As officers led Victoria and Richard away, Eleanor Montgomery attempted one final defense. This is a personal matter that's been blown out of proportion. Personal? Nathan's voice could have frozen fire. You helped orchestrate your daughter's marriage to me, knowing she planned to destroy my family's legacy. Tell me, Eleanor, how's your social calendar looking these days? I hear invitations have been scarce since word of your involvement spread. The Heritage Board chairman called for order. In light of these revelations, all projects involving Hayes family properties are suspended pending investigation. Mr. Hayes, the board extends its deepest apologies for any role we played in this fraud. Nathan nodded once, then turned to leave. He'd achieved what he came for. Victoria's empire was crumbling, and with it, her plans for the Hayes estate. But his work wasn't finished. The reckoning had only begun. Back in his Cambridge apartment, Grace monitored the fallout on multiple screens. Victoria's being eviscerated in the press. Richard's board of directors has called an emergency meeting. The Heritage Board is reviewing years of approved projects. And the children? Safe at school. Dr. Chen is with Emma, ready to handle any fallout. Maria's watching over James and Sophie. Nathan studied the wall of evidence that had brought down Victoria's schemes. Make sure Jennifer Walsh is protected. Victoria will look for revenge once the shock wears off. Already handled, Grace assured him. Robert's firm offered her a position. She'll be key in untangling the fraudulent property deals. Nathan's phone buzzed. A message from William Hayes. Well done, son. The Hayes name stands for something again. The next phase would require precision. Victoria and Richard faced criminal charges, but Nathan wasn't finished. 8 years of lies demanded more than just legal justice. The Hayes family had survived centuries in Boston by knowing when to strike hard and when to strike deeper. Send everything to the Historical Society boards in New York and Chicago, he instructed Grace. Victoria had development plans there too. Let's make sure she has nowhere to rebuild. The Hayes legacy would be preserved, not just in Boston, but wherever Victoria had sought to destroy history for profit. Nathan Hayes, the teacher she dismissed as weak, had taught her the most important lesson of all. Some histories can't be erased, some betrayals can't be forgiven, and some names carry power that can't be bought. Chapter 8. The Fall. William Hayes died on a Tuesday morning, surrounded by family, his son Nathan, daughter Rebecca, and Marcus Rivera, who had served the Hayes household longer than some relatives had lived. Victoria, learning of his death through her lawyers, attempted to rush to the estate with her team of doctors and legal advisors. They found the gates locked, the property under guard. "This is outrageous," Victoria's lawyer blustered to the security team. "Mrs. Hayes has every right." "Mrs. Hayes has no rights here." Robert Morrison stepped out of the house. The estate passed into a historical trust yesterday. William Hayes's final act as a lucid, competent adult, witnessed by myself and 2 other judges. Victoria pushed forward. "I demand." "You demand nothing." Nathan emerged from the shadows of the portico. "Your demands died with your lies, Victoria." The Hayes estate is now the William Hayes Museum of Educational Heritage, a fitting legacy for a family that valued knowledge over profit. Eleanor Montgomery appeared behind her daughter. "We'll challenge this in court." William wasn't competent. 3 separate medical evaluations prove otherwise, Rebecca Hayes countered, holding up documentation, conducted by independent physicians, videotaped, and witnessed by legal experts. "Would you like to explain to a judge why you tried to have unauthorized doctors declare him incompetent?" Victoria's perfect makeup couldn't hide her rising panic. "The children are protected by an educational trust," Nathan cut in. "Their futures secured beyond your reach or Richard's." "Speaking of Richard, how's he enjoying the federal investigation into Thompson Development's financial practices?" News vans began arriving, attracted by the confrontation. Victoria attempted to retreat, but Nathan's voice stopped her. "Running from cameras? That's new for you. Stay, Victoria. Watch how your carefully constructed world falls apart." Robert Morrison stepped forward, addressing the gathering press. "The Hayes Family Trust announces the establishment of the William Hayes Museum of Educational Heritage. This historic property, protected by preservation laws and held in perpetual trust, will serve as a center for historical education and cultural preservation." Reporters shouted questions as Victoria stood frozen, watching her plans for the estate crumble. "Mrs. Hayes," one called out, "comment on the fraud charges?" "Mr. Hayes," another yelled, "will you press charges against your wife for her manipulation of heritage classifications?" Nathan faced the cameras directly. "The Hayes family has protected Boston's historical legacy for generations. We will continue to do so, against any threat, personal or professional." Eleanor attempted damage control. "My daughter has only ever acted in the best interest." "Save it, Eleanor." Amanda Thompson emerged from her car. "The society papers are already running stories about your role in arranging Victoria's marriage. How many charity boards have asked for your resignation?" Victoria spun to face her mother. "You promised me this would work. You said once we controlled the Hayes name." "Once you what?" Nathan's voice cut through their argument. The cameras swiveled to capture his response. "Please, Victoria, tell Boston exactly how you and your mother plan to use my family's name." "The press seems very interested." Victoria's lawyer tried to intervene, but the damage was done. Her outburst, caught on camera, confirmed what Boston society had been whispering. The marriage had been a calculated move to access the Hayes family's influence. Inside the estate, William Hayes's body had been moved to the hospital, but his presence lingered in the artifacts he'd protected. Nathan walked through rooms Victoria had planned to gut for condominiums, touching books his father had preserved, documents that traced Boston's evolution. "The trust documents are ironclad," Robert confirmed, joining him. "Victoria's team can't touch anything." The property's historical status has been reinforced by 3 separate preservation boards. And Eleanor's role? Amanda's evidence is damning. Recordings of Eleanor discussing the planned takeover of Hayes properties, emails about manipulating William's medical care. She'll be lucky to maintain any social standing. Rebecca entered with more news. Victoria's firm is imploding. Jennifer Walsh's evidence sparked internal investigations. Partners are fleeing, clients withdrawing projects. Richard, Amanda's recordings reached his board. They've called for his resignation. The Thompson Development empire won't survive this. Nathan nodded, studying a portrait of his father in younger days. Make sure Jennifer Walsh is protected. Victoria will blame her for the firm's collapse. Already done, Robert assured him. My firm's security team is monitoring her. Victoria won't get near her. Outside, The press continued to gather. Victoria's attempts to paint herself as a victim had backfired spectacularly, her mask cracking under the pressure of revealed truths. "Nathan," she called out as he emerged again. "The children need stability. Think about them." "I have." His voice carried across the lawn. "Their educational trusts are secure. Their futures protected from your schemes and Richard's influence. That's what real parental love looks like, Victoria. Protection without possession." Eleanor tried one last approach. "The Montgomery family name means nothing compared to the integrity of the Hayes legacy," Nathan finished. "You taught Victoria to value appearance over substance, Eleanor. That lesson ends here." The gathered press captured it all: Victoria's desperation, Eleanor's social downfall, the Hayes family's united stand against their manipulation. By nightfall, Boston society would be discussing nothing else. Inside his father's study, Nathan reviewed the museum plans with Robert and Rebecca. The Hayes estate would become a center for historical education, preserving not just artifacts but the principles William Hayes had lived by. "Victoria's legal team will fight this," Rebecca warned. "Let them," Nathan replied. The Hayes family didn't survive centuries in Boston by backing down from fights. Victoria wanted to play with heritage? She's about to learn what real legacy means. The Hayes estate stood unchanged as Victoria's carefully constructed world crumbled around it. William Hayes's legacy, nearly stolen by greed, would instead become a monument to the principles he'd lived by: education, preservation, and the unyielding strength of truth. Chapter 9. Justice Served. The transformation of the Hayes estate into a museum happened with the same dedication to detail that had brought down Victoria's empire. Nathan surveyed the completed renovation from his father's, now his office, where generations of Hayes men had protected Boston's heritage. Grace Sullivan worked at a desk near his, coordinating final security measures. Their relationship, forged in the shadow war against Victoria, had evolved into something neither had expected. "Final numbers from the fraud investigation," she reported. "Victoria's firm is facing multiple criminal charges. Richard's board voted him out this morning. Their development empire is finished." "And the children?" Emma's presentation on genetic inheritance won first prize in the science fair. "James's behavioral issues have improved since starting sessions with Dr. Chen." "Sophie." Grace smiled slightly. "Sophie's been reading historical stories to her class, just like you used to do with her." A knock interrupted them. George Thompson entered, looking older but unburdened. "The grandchildren's trust is secured. Richard can't touch it, even if he manages to avoid jail time." "Thank you," Nathan nodded. "They deserve a future free from their parents' schemes." "Speaking of schemes," Grace interjected, "Eleanor Montgomery's attempt to re-enter Boston society isn't going well. 3 more charity boards requested her resignation this morning." George's expression hardened. She orchestrated this whole disaster. Victoria was ambitious, but Eleanor taught her to value social position above all else. "They taught each other," Nathan corrected. "Now they can support each other through their social exile." Amanda Thompson arrived next, bringing updates on Richard's legal troubles. "The SEC investigation is expanding. Offshore accounts, fraudulent permits, bribes. He's facing serious prison time." Victoria? Trying to distance herself, but Jennifer Walsh's evidence ties her to everything. "The DA is offering a deal, but it still means jail time." Nathan studied the museum blueprints spread across his desk. The William Hayes Museum of Educational Heritage would open next month, dedicated to preserving not just artifacts but the principles of integrity his father had embodied. "The children want to attend the opening," Grace mentioned softly. "They should," Nathan decided. "It's their heritage too, regardless of biology. The Hayes legacy is about more than blood." Maria Ramirez entered with Dr. Chun, both carrying updates about the children's progress. "Emma's asked to intern at the museum next summer," Maria reported. "She says she wants to understand her family's real legacy, not Victoria's version of it." Dr. Chun added, "James is writing a paper on Boston's historical families. He's focusing on how they preserved their values through generations." "And Sophie still carries your old history books everywhere," Maria smiled. "She started a classroom project on preservation, teaching other second graders about protecting old buildings. The museum's grand opening approached as Boston's winter yielded to spring. Nathan had chosen the date carefully, exactly 1 year after he'd discovered Victoria's betrayal through the heating vent. Victoria, under house arrest pending trial, sent a message through her lawyers requesting to attend. Nathan's response was brief. The museum exists to preserve truth, not lies. The opening drew Boston's elite, but not for the reasons Victoria would have planned. They came to witness the rebirth of the Hayes legacy, the triumph of substance over appearance. Emma, James, and Sophie attended with their teachers and Dr. Chun, exploring exhibits that traced their adoptive family's role in Boston's development. Emma lingered over documents Nathan had used in his lessons. James studied Revolutionary War artifacts with newfound appreciation. Sophie read aloud from preserved letters, her voice carrying the same passion for history that had first drawn Nathan to teaching. "They're remarkable children," Grace observed, watching them. "They're Hayes children," Nathan corrected. "Not by blood, but by choice and character." The museum's centerpiece, the William Hayes Memorial Library, housed centuries of documents his father had protected. Here, future generations would learn the true meaning of legacy, not in property values or social status, but in the preservation of principles worth protecting. Victoria's empire had fallen. Richard's development schemes had crumbled. Eleanor's social influence had evaporated. But the Hayes family legacy, tested by betrayal, had emerged stronger. Nathan Hayes stood in his father's office, now the museum director's study, surrounded by the history he'd fought to protect. Grace worked nearby, their shared battle against Victoria having forged a bond built on trust rather than deception. The children would grow up understanding the difference between appearance and substance, between social position and true character. Victoria's betrayal had taught them that family isn't defined by blood, but by the values passed down through generations. The Hayes family motto, Veritas Vincit, stood carved above the museum entrance, a testament to the power of truth over deception. Nathan had proven that legacy wasn't just inherited. It was earned through actions, protected through strength, and preserved through unwavering principle. Victoria and Richard's trials made headlines, their carefully constructed facades crumbling under the weight of evidence. Jennifer Walsh's testimony, backed by years of documented fraud, ensured their convictions. Boston society, which had once embraced Victoria's charm, now studied her fall as a cautionary tale. Emma, now 14, spent afternoons in the museum's research library, discovering her place in the Hayes legacy through actions rather than blood. James's behavioral issues transformed into passionate debates about historical preservation in his classes. Sophie started a children's reading group, sharing the stories Nathan had once read to her with a new generation. "You've built something remarkable here," Grace said one evening, reviewing security protocols for the museum's expanding collection. "Not just the museum. You've redefined what the Hayes name means." "We built it," Nathan corrected, acknowledging her role in bringing down Victoria's schemes. Their relationship, founded on shared values rather than social climbing, proved that some partnerships strengthened rather than betrayed. George Thompson became a regular visitor, working to ensure his grandchildren understood their dual heritage, the mistakes to avoid from the Thompson line, the principles to embrace from the Hayes tradition. His efforts to make amends for his son's actions showed the children that redemption was possible through genuine change. Amanda Thompson collaborated with the museum's educational programs, her experience with Richard's betrayal fueling her dedication to teaching truth over appearance. Her recordings, which had helped bring down Richard's empire, became part of a larger lesson about corporate responsibility and historical preservation. The final blow to Victoria's hopes came when she attempted to challenge the educational trusts Nathan had established for the children. The courts, presented with evidence of her manipulation and neglect, not only upheld the trusts but granted Nathan significant input in the children's education despite his lack of biological connection. "Biology doesn't define family," the judge had stated. "Character does." Eleanor Montgomery's social decline completed the destruction of the facade she'd helped Victoria construct. Their scheme to use the Hayes name for profit had instead taught Boston society a lasting lesson about substance over appearance. As Nathan closed his office that evening, he passed the museum's newest exhibit, a timeline of Boston's historical families, including the recent Hayes triumph over those who would destroy heritage for profit. The display ended with a quote from William Hayes. "Legacy lives not in what we claim, but in what we protect." Victoria's betrayal had tested the Hayes family's strength. Nathan's response had proven that strength wasn't measured in social status or property values, but in the unwavering defense of principles worth preserving. The children, though not his by blood, would grow up understanding this truth, that family, like legacy, was built through choice, character, and the courage to stand against those who would destroy what matters most. The Hayes name endured, not as a tool for social climbing, but as a symbol of preservation, education, and the enduring power of truth. Nathan's victory wasn't just in defeating Victoria's schemes. It was in showing that some legacies grow stronger when tested, some betrayals lead to better futures, and some families are forged in principle rather than blood. Grace touched his arm as they left, their shared battle having built a foundation for something genuine. "Ready to go home?" Nathan nodded, knowing that home wasn't the mansion Victoria had coveted, but the principles he'd fought to protect. The Hayes legacy would continue, stronger for having survived its greatest test, richer for understanding that true wealth lay not in property or position, but in the preservation of what matters most. Truth had conquered all, just as the family motto promised. And in that truth, a new chapter of the Hayes legacy began, one built not on deception and social climbing, but on the bedrock of integrity that had sustained them for generations. The end of Victoria's schemes marked not just the fall of a facade, but the rise of something more genuine. The Hayes family legacy, nearly destroyed by greed, emerged reinforced by the very battle that had threatened it. Nathan's triumph proved that some victories aren't measured in social status or wealth, but in the preservation of principles worth fighting for. In the end, the greatest legacy he could leave the children wasn't property or position, but the understanding that character, not circumstance, defines a person's true worth. The Hayes name would endure, not as a tool for social climbers, but as a testament to the enduring power of truth over deception, substance over appearance, and principle over profit. Epilogue. 10 years later, the William Hayes Museum of Educational Heritage had grown beyond its original scope, expanding to 3 additional historical properties across Boston. Nathan Hayes, now approaching 50, stood in his office reviewing the latest acquisition, a colonial-era schoolhouse saved from developers who tried to bypass preservation laws. "Dad," Emma Hayes Sullivan's voice carried through the hallway. At 23, she'd grown into a formidable young woman, having just completed her master's degree in historical preservation at Harvard. "The board approved our proposal for the children's education wing." Nathan looked up from the blueprints, pride evident in his expression. Emma had chosen to take both the Hayes and Sullivan names after his marriage to Grace 5 years ago, a decision that spoke volumes about where her loyalties lay. "Show me the plans," he said, clearing space on his desk. Emma spread out detailed drawings. "We're converting the East Wing into interactive exhibits. Kids can experience different historical periods, understand why preservation matters." Sophie's already volunteered to run the storytelling sessions. At 17, Sophie had inherited Nathan's passion for teaching. She spent weekends at the museum, sharing historical stories with visiting children, her natural gift for narrative bringing Boston's past to life. "James called," Emma continued. "He's flying in next week. His law firm's handling another case against developers trying to demolish historical properties in Chicago. Said he's using the Hayes case as precedent." Nathan nodded, remembering how James, now 20, had channeled his teenage anger into a determination to protect other families from schemes like Victoria's. He'd earned a scholarship to Yale Law School, specializing in preservation law and corporate fraud cases. The door opened as Grace Sullivan Hayes entered, her cybersecurity expertise having evolved into overseeing digital preservation projects for historical documents. Her marriage to Nathan had surprised no one who'd witnessed their partnership during the Victoria crisis. "Victoria's parole hearing is next month," Grace reported, her expression grim. "Richard Thompson died in prison last year, but she's trying to rebuild some kind of life. Any contact attempts?" Nathan's voice carried the same steel it had developed during their shadow war. "She sent letters to the children. All 3 returned them unopened." Grace pulled up security footage on her tablet. Eleanor Montgomery was spotted near the museum yesterday. Security escorted her out. The Montgomery-Thompson scandal had become a Harvard Business School case study in corporate fraud and social manipulation. Victoria's conviction had carried a 15-year sentence, though she'd served only 12. Richard Thompson had received 20 years but died of heart failure in his 8th year of imprisonment. Eleanor Montgomery, though never charged criminally, had been thoroughly exiled from Boston society. Amanda Thompson's on line 1, Grace added. Something about the Thompson family trust for the children. Amanda had remarried 5 years after Richard's conviction, finding happiness with a federal judge who shared her commitment to corporate accountability. She'd maintained contact with her ex-husband's children, working with Nathan to ensure they understood both sides of their heritage. Nathan took the call, listening as Amanda detailed her plans to transfer additional funds into the educational trusts he'd established. Despite her new life in New York, she remained committed to making amends for Richard's actions. George Thompson's health is failing, she reported. He's updated his will to include specific provisions for historical preservation projects. Says he wants to balance out the damage Richard did to Boston's heritage. George had become a regular presence at the museum, his relationship with his grandchildren strengthening as he helped them understand the importance of learning from past mistakes. His efforts to restore the Thompson name's reputation had focused on supporting preservation rather than destruction. The afternoon brought a visit from Jennifer Walsh, now a senior partner at Robert Morrison's law firm. Her whistleblower testimony had launched her legal career, specializing in corporate fraud cases. Just finished another case against developers trying to manipulate heritage laws, she reported, settling into a chair. Judge cited the Hayes precedent. Victoria's schemes ended up strengthening preservation legislation across the country. Detective Michael Reeves, recently retired from the Boston PD, joined them for their regular monthly meeting. His investigation of Victoria had sparked a specialized unit focusing on historical property fraud. Victoria's been making inquiries about Boston real estate again, he warned. Nothing direct, but she's reached out to former contacts. She won't find any allies here, Nathan stated flatly. The Hayes name stands for preservation now, not profit. Maria Ramirez arrived next, having transitioned from nanny to the museum's director of community outreach. Her detailed documentation of Victoria's negligence had helped secure the children's future. Now she helped other families understand the importance of cultural heritage. The children's weekend programs are full through next year, she reported proudly. Sophie's storytelling sessions have waiting lists. The museum had become a focal point for Boston's educational community. Nathan's teaching background had shaped its mission, focusing on engaging future generations in historical preservation. Late afternoon brought a video call from Rebecca Hayes, now a prominent preservation law expert consulting with cities worldwide. She'd married a British historian, splitting her time between Boston and London while helping draft international heritage protection laws. Dublin's adopted preservation standards based on our model, she shared. Victoria's attempt to destroy our legacy ended up protecting historical properties globally. The Hayes family vault, once nearly stolen for profit, had become a research center for scholars studying Boston's development. Nathan had opened its archives selectively, ensuring the family's role in preserving history would guide future generations. Dr. Sarah Chan still counseled students at Boston Public High, where Nathan occasionally guest lectured. The school had established a historical preservation club, inspired by the Hayes case's impact on local heritage awareness. As evening approached, Nathan reviewed photos on his desk. Emma at her Harvard graduation, James arguing his first preservation case, Sophie leading museum tours, Grace working on digital archives, their marriage combining professional partnership with personal understanding. The Hayes legacy, tested by betrayal, had emerged stronger through defending what mattered most. A new photo showed the entire extended family at last year's Christmas gathering. The Hayes Sullivan children stood tall and confident, their character shaped not by biology but by the principles they'd chosen to embrace. Amanda Thompson and her new husband, George Thompson in his wheelchair, Maria Ramirez and her family, Jennifer Walsh, Detective Reeves, all connected not by blood but by their stand against Victoria's destruction. The final photo was the newest, Emma's engagement announcement. She'd met her fiancé through preservation work, their shared commitment to protecting historical heritage forming the foundation for their relationship. The Hayes name carries weight again, Grace observed, joining him at the window. But not the way Victoria planned. Nathan nodded, watching visitors explore the museum grounds Victoria had once planned to destroy. The Hayes legacy lived in Emma's dedication to preservation, James's legal battles against fraud, Sophie's gift for sharing history. It lived in Grace's partnership, in the allies who'd helped expose truth, in the strength that came from defending principles rather than profits. Victoria's betrayal had tested the Hayes family's foundation. Their response had transformed a private tragedy into a public triumph, strengthening not just one family's legacy but an entire city's commitment to preserving its heritage. The museum stood as testament to William Hayes's wisdom. Legacy lived not in what people claimed, but in what they chose to protect. The children, though not Hayes by blood, had proven themselves Hayes by choice, by character, by their dedication to preserving what mattered most. Nathan's phone buzzed with a text from James. Another case. Developer tried to cite Victoria's old schemes as precedent. Judge quoted grandfather William. Legacy lives in what we protect. We're making a difference, Dad. Grace squeezed his hand, understanding the weight of the message. Their marriage had proven that true partnerships strengthen legacy rather than exploiting it. The Hayes name had survived its greatest threat by remembering its core truth. Family, like heritage, was built through choice and character rather than mere circumstance. As night fell over Boston, lights illuminated the museum's facade, the family motto still carved proud above the entrance. Veritas vincit. Truth had conquered Victoria's lies, Richard's schemes, Eleanor's social manipulations. But more importantly, it had shown 3 children that family transcended biology, that legacy meant protecting what mattered, and that some betrayals led to better futures. Victoria's parole hearing would come and go. She might attempt to rebuild her life, but Boston society had learned its lesson about valuing appearance over substance. The Hayes legacy, nearly destroyed by her ambition, had instead been strengthened by surviving her betrayal. The museum's newest wing would open next month, dedicated to teaching future generations about preservation. Emma would lead the project, James would ensure its legal protection, and Sophie would share its stories. The Hayes legacy would continue not through Victoria's grand plans, but through the quiet dedication of those who understood that true wealth lay in protecting what mattered most. Nathan Hayes, the teacher Victoria had dismissed as weak, had taught Boston's most powerful lesson, that legacy wasn't measured in property values or social status, but in the principles people chose to defend. The Hayes name endured, stronger for having been tested, richer for understanding that true family grew from choice rather than chance. As he closed his office for the night, Nathan passed the wall of truth, a display detailing Victoria's schemes and their ultimate failure. It served not as a mark of vengeance, but as a reminder that some victories weren't measured in wealth or power, but in the preservation of principles worth protecting. The Hayes legacy continued, not as Victoria had planned through profit and development, but as William Hayes had lived it, through education, preservation, and the unwavering defense of truth. The children, though not his by blood, had proven themselves his heirs in the ways that mattered most, carrying forward a legacy strengthened rather than broken by its greatest test. Grace waited by the door, their shared battle having built a foundation for something genuine. Ready? Nathan nodded, knowing that home wasn't the mansion Victoria had coveted, but the principles they'd fought to protect. The Hayes legacy would continue, enriched by the very crisis that had threatened it, guided by the understanding that true wealth lay not in what people owned, but in what they chose to preserve. Truth had conquered all, just as the family motto promised. And in that truth, the Hayes legacy flourished, not through Victoria's grand schemes or social climbing, but through the quiet strength of those who understood that some things were worth fighting to protect. The museum lights dimmed, but the Hayes legacy burned brighter than ever, illuminating a path forward for those who understood that family, like heritage, was built not through circumstance but through choice, character, and the courage to defend what mattered most. In the end, Victoria's betrayal had given the Hayes family its greatest gift, the proof that legacy lived not in social status or property deeds, but in the principles people chose to protect, the truths they dared to defend, and the family they built through choice rather than chance. The Hayes name endured, not as a tool for social climbers, but as a testament to the enduring power of truth over deception, substance over appearance, and principle over profit. Nathan's victory wasn't just in defeating Victoria's schemes. It was in showing that some legacies grew stronger when tested, some betrayals led to better futures, and some families were forged in principle rather than blood. And so the Hayes legacy continued, enriched by its greatest trial, strengthened by those who chose to protect it, and preserved for future generations who would learn that true wealth lay not in what people possessed, but in what they dared to defend. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.